visiting the Kennedy School this week and next week. And I should give you a little background perhaps on that before turning this over to an esteemed member of our faculty, Iris Bonet. The World Economic Forum, as you know, was an institution that was founded by a graduate of this school, Klaus Schwab, who is Swiss, and thought some years ago that there really ought to be in Europe a conversation among business leaders that was comparable to the various conversations that go on in this country that he had discovered among business leaders in the United States. He went back and started such an organization in Switzerland and gradually expanded and morphed into what is now called the World Economic Forum, which is an annual gathering of around 2,000 business, political, leaders, academics, journalists, ne'er-do-wells like me and others who go there for about 4 or 5 days and engage in intensive discussions and as you would imagine, a lot of networking in which a lot of important decisions are made and frequently relationships and bonding goes on that make a difference. Israelis talk to Palestinians there, for example, in ways they do not necessarily elsewhere. When the wall fell, all the Eastern European leaders came there, from the emerging new countries to appeal for investment funds. And one can go on and on with that. Well, a few years ago, Klaus decided to start a program. He's got another program on social entrepreneurship, and he decided to start a third program that would identify and bring into the World Economic Forum family or community what were called young global leaders. And the idea was to identify people around the world in business, governmental, or civic sectors, 40 years of age or younger, who had already demonstrated leadership in their respective capacities, and also were showing a real commitment to the world and to progress in the world. So each of them was, and there's an application nomination process. Queen Rania of Jordan is the head of the selection committee. It's an international committee. And around 150 are chosen each year, of whom about 125 become active, and they go to Davos and they go to regional meetings. And about 2 years ago, we began conversations between the Kennedy School and the World Economic Forum about the possibility of starting an executive education program here at the Kennedy School for groups of young global leaders. This week, we've inaugurated that executive education partnership in which the school, the World Economic Forum, the Center for Public Leadership, of which I'm a part, and the executive education program here at the school are all partners to make this happen. We've also had some very generous benefactors on the outside who are making this possible. David Rubenstein and Howard Cox will both be on campus tomorrow, for example, who have been very involved. Bill George we've had 4 major donors who have come into this. The other one is Marilyn Carlson Nelson from Minneapolis. So we have about 3 dozen who signed up this time, and they're giving up 10 days here to come here to the Kennedy School. You'll see them over here in educational settings. And they also have been quite interested in meeting students. And they really want to spend time with our students, and we've encouraged that. We thought, just as we're trying to work with them on their leadership, for them to have a chance to meet younger students would be very worthwhile. And so that the reason we're having this in somewhat different style tonight is after this is over, we're going to have a reception here, and you're welcome to stay and to mix and mingle and to meet, and possibly to set up a coffee or something like that with someone you meet that you'd like to talk with. And I know Career Services is working with students to try to arrange other times when that might be possible. So that's the background, and obviously our hope is that those of you who are students at the Kennedy School today, indeed those of you who are undergraduates or elsewhere at Harvard today, will aspire to be up here on this platform one day. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to think of you as future young global leaders, aspiring young global leaders. But we look a lot to this group, and we really think they have a great deal of promise for the next generation. What they're studying here, 2 things they're studying. Essentially, they're looking at the substantive challenges that will face the world over the next 20 years or so, in their prime years. And they're also looking at ways to enhance their own leadership capability, especially across sectors. We think that increasingly people of the future, the leaders of the future, are not only going to be leaders within their own sectors, within their own nations, but they're going to be leaders who think globally, who think of themselves as stewards of the world. And we wish to encourage that. So that's the background. Iris Bonet here on our faculty, Professor Bonet has been just fantastic in pulling together the curriculum for this program. We have 4 representatives, a representative in all sorts of ways, backgrounds, nations, gender, race, ethnicity, and the like. 4 representatives from the Young Global Leaders who are going to be here for this panel. But now, without further ado, thank you, and please give a warm welcome to Iris Bonet and the 4 Young Global Leaders.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be on the podium today and discuss with all of you the challenges and opportunities of leadership in the next 20 to 30 years. Before we do that, I did want to point out to all the students in the audience that this group of young global leaders is in fact much bigger than what represented here on the forum, in the forum tonight. And I know because many of you are eager to meet some of the young global leaders, I would in fact ask the young global leaders to please stand up for a moment so we can see what a big group it is and students can have a chance to kind of find someone who they might want to see in the future. So this group is with us at the Kennedy School for 2 weeks, and this is almost at the end of our first week, and it's been an incredibly inspiring week for all of us. So we hope we can share some of this inspiration with you this afternoon. The plan is for me first to introduce our panelists, then to have a discussion here on the panel for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then open up to the floor for your questions and comments. So let me start with the person to my left, Reinette Tilliard. She joins us from South Africa. In fact, in 1999, at the age of 31, Mrs. Reinette Tilliard became the youngest member ever elected to the South African Parliament. Now she has assumed the position of director of the Helen Suzman Foundation. Mrs. Tilliard says that her goal is mainstreaming liberal values into the living, breathing, daily reality of South African lives. To my left is Mr. Jae-young Lee. He joins us from the Republic of Korea, where he is the founder and CEO of Daum Communications, one of Asia's largest internet platform with over 40 million users. In fact, he's one of the most renowned Asian entrepreneurs, having created one of South Korea's largest internet companies. Mrs. Hania Bitar, who joins us from Palestine. Mrs. Hania Bitar is the founder and Director General of the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation, Pialara, in Ramallah, Palestine. Regarding the mission of Pialara, Mrs. Bitar states, "We aim at making our young members play an active role in serving their country and in expressing their love and nationalism in a creative and constructive way." Then, finally, Mr. Van Jones, who joins us from the United States. He's a civil rights lawyer, is working to combine solutions to America's 2 biggest problems, social inequality and environmental destruction. He is the founder and national executive director of the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. Regarding social inequality and environmental destruction today, Mr. Jones says, "There's no way to get changes big enough to solve these problems without creating pathways out of poverty for millions of new green-collar workers." Let me start by asking our panelists the following question, which is probably easy for you to answer, but of burning interest to me and I'm sure also to the audience. How does one become a global leader, a young global leader? How did you become a young global leader? Let me start with you, Renette.
Well, I suppose some of it becomes an answer which is at a national level in the country in which you exercise your leadership, and then the consequences of the way in which you play that role, whether or not your contribution grabs anyone's attention. In my particular case, there's just a small correction I want to make on the age that I was elected, and I'm not doing it purely for shock value. I was 25 when I became a Member of Parliament in the second South African Democratic Parliament in 1999. And in fact, I have the enormous privilege of actually having my former party leader at your school as well, here at the Kennedy School. Tony Leon is here with you. And I had the privilege of actually having a leadership, having faith, and the courage to put that kind of faith in a young individual to send a 25-year-old young woman to Parliament in 1999. Of course, once in Parliament, I had to play quite a proactive role in the various committees in which I served, which were finance and public accounts and a variety of others, including defense and foreign affairs. But it certainly starts with a combination of commitment and indeed, certainly faith.
Thank you. Jae-hong?
Oh, my case. I am a founder of an internet company in Korea, and for me, I think it was one of the first experiment to have internet culture in Korea, which was very kind of old, business culture they had. So in '95, I founded an internet company with 3 people with a small amount of money, and then it eventually grown to the platform for internet, and which changed the culture, social thinking, and their business life and everything, from bringing Korea from industrialized country to more informationalized country. And also, I think my role to bring those new business cultures, not only internet but also new business cultures, bring into the practice, was one of the things maybe recognized as being a young leader, global young leader, a young global leader, that kind of title. But for me, I think it's very important for the people to really think about, not just about successful being a businessman or making achievement in some of his own area, but really thinking about the impact you can make to change your society which you're in. And I think finding the most effective way that could be either your field in being a politician or entrepreneur. I think that would be recognized as young global leaders or maybe some other kind of titles. And I think that will help not only yourself but also your society to move on to the next stage.
Hanya.
Well, it's quite interesting how the background of each of us actually determines who we are. And I'll start by telling you a small story. And this happened when I was almost your age, still at university. Actually, I was invited to visit Poland. Then it was the late Pope, and he was gathering young Christians in his hometown of Częstochowa. We were only 8 Palestinians who were able to go to this gathering in Poland. And there was like a big rally. Everybody was walking, groups from all over the world, young people from different countries around the world. And we were walking and rallying and then reaching a big gate. And there was this man with a loudspeaker announcing each country or nationality arriving. So he would say, and here comes the group from the USA. And around 4,000 young Americans would pass, and everybody was cheering and clapping. And now the group from France, maybe 2,000. Then it was our turn, and we were only 8. And he was like, from where are you? And we said, we're the group from Palestine. And he was, and now comes the group of Pakistan. We were very dismayed and very angry and very disappointed. But this man actually reflected the reality that he never heard of Palestine, of Palestinians. From that day, for me, it was a big mission. There was really this national cause as a Palestinian to really see how can I fight and do something for us as Palestinians to liberate the land and fight for freedom and liberty. And at the same time, it was looking at my role. What is my role as an individual, as a person? What can I do in this crisis area and in this context. And this is where I decided that I should try and make out of each young person a hero. And by making each young person a hero, I was helping young people to see hope in life. Because living in a crisis situation deprives you of even seeing the beauty in life. You see more beauty in death than in life. And this was the starting point for me. Thank you.
That's good. Well, my story also has to have a little bit of background as well, because getting called a global leader is something new for me. I'm very local, and I spent a lot of years trying to get kids out of jail and into jobs in Oakland, California. And I burned out, got tired, going to a lot of funerals with young people in the caskets and white-haired people in the pews. And I decided that I was going to do something really radical, which was I was going to go to Marin County to a spirituality retreat. Now, in my neighborhood, you don't tell anybody that you're going to a spirituality retreat. So I just said I was going to the Raiders game, and I didn't come back for 3 days. But what happened was when I got there to Marin County, anybody been to Marin County? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. I was like, what is this? Everybody's happy, you know? So everything's beautiful. People eat this ambrosial food called tofu, you know? They carry yoga mats around, and, you know, and everything's all ecologically correct. Solar panels and all this sort of stuff. And then I would get in my car and I would go home, and 20 minutes later I'd be back in Oakland. Asthma, epidemic, cancer clusters. I said, this looks like eco-apartheid to me. Eco-apartheid, where we have ecological haves, ecological have-nots. And I felt that there might be an opportunity to get some of the jobs and the investment and all the beautiful things that were beginning to happen in Marin County as this green economy was taking off, to start happening also in Oakland. And I thought that this was a brilliant idea, you know. I was proud of myself, you know. I started coming up with poetry about it, you know. We're gonna go from jail cells to solar cells, you know. I was excited, you know. The green wave is gonna lift all boats, you know. And I'm going back to Oakland with this vision, you know, of us being the Silicon Valley of green capital and all this type of stuff. And I was received like someone who had taken copious amounts of drugs, you know, by my colleagues. They thought I was crazy, they weren't interested, they thought some white stuff, it's for hippies, whatever. So I spent a long time trying to get green-collar jobs for urban youth. And I said, you know, they're going to have to put up millions of solar panels to beat global warming. You're going to have to weatherize millions of buildings. You know, give some of the kids in our neighborhood those jobs, those opportunities. Let them have these new green careers. Let them rise up with this whole thing. And I beat my head against the wall for several years. Finally, we got the Oakland City Council to agree to create something called the Green Jobs Corps, to get our community colleges training our young people in all these new green trades. And then suddenly, somebody called our office, and one of the youth took the message, and it was somebody from the office of Nancy Pelosi. Who is Nancy Pelosi? And why does she keep calling our office? You know? I'm busy, I'm trying to change the world. Who is this person? It turned out it was Nancy Pelosi that was calling. And she adopted our cause and introduced, as a part of the energy bill that's going through the House, something called the Green Jobs Act of 2007. And since then, Senator Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and John Edwards have also adopted our cause. Bill Clinton is supporting us now. We're asking for $1 billion for green-collar job training across the country, and it's really taken off. I think that sometimes we think that we have to start off at a high level, start off in DC, start off at the UN. And I would argue that sometimes it's more powerful to start off with a local problem and to bring forward a local solution. If you do it with enough passion and enough creativity, it can sometimes have national and global impact.
Thank you very much. Building on what you just described to us, what do you see as the leadership opportunities and challenges of the next 10, 20, 30 years that may be waiting for the young global leaders here in the audience, from your perspective, from your part of the world, but maybe also somewhat more globally? Rana, can I start with you again?
Absolutely. I think from our part of the world, it is certainly that the rest of the world would not forget about our part of the world, whether that is with reference to the ongoing issues in trade and trade negotiations that are going to outlive the potential lack of conclusion in the Doha round for future generations to deal with the consequences of a collapse of a multilateral trading system, or whether it relates to the ongoing efforts in relation to peacekeeping or genocide or Darfur-related issues. Those may be current inflection points, but they're symptomatic of the issues that we are confronting and dealing with as a continent that we would need to ensure that future generations would continue to bear in mind in the way in which they view our continent. But not only to view it as a continent of despair, but to view it as a continent of tremendous opportunity, not only with reference to economic growth, but also to the values that it can offer in relation to a world very often looking for values. I think in our country in particular, issues around the power of multicultural negotiation that led to our transition is a powerful message that transcends our country, certainly in that period in history, and has a resonance increasingly in a globe which very often on the basis of whether it's race or religion still seems to struggle with those issues. So I think those are certainly fundamental challenges. I think the future generation of leaders are going to have new tools and capacities that they can leverage in a way that we are only at the cusp of understanding. The extent to which technology will allow future leaders to leverage networks, we are only at the cusp of understanding, and those networks will be leveraged to deal with many, many challenges. And we truly are only at the beginning of understanding the power of how that can be done and what it can be leveraged for positive change.
Thank you. Jay Wong.
Yeah, I would just give you from a business perspective and maybe somewhat Korean perspective, but I think it applies to many other sectors as well. Is before there was very different business culture and social order and everything before internet, and after internet and new venture kind of concept of business coming in, it has changed a lot. Not only U.S. but the Asia and everywhere. And that was brought in by somewhat charismatic, in different charismatic compared to the former, much older business leaders. But it was also in one. It can be also charismatic because we were pushing very hard not to be charismatic, but to do that you had to be charismatic because if not, we could not change the culture at one day. So I think it was very successful to move on. To that kind of stage. It's happening everywhere, and especially in Asia, that was very valuable for society because that was changing the social thinking at the same time. But from now on, I mean, just building that kind of block, changing that kind of culture is kind of already done. But now, what's more important is really kind of other level of new leadership, leadership 2.0 or 3.0. Which can really kind of, you have to have, now there are people all have all the information, they understand the new culture and everything, and there are a lot of interest and they are being more wealthier, more educated. And really controlling them is not easy to just being charismatic, to control, just leading, to give your vision and things like that. So there will be more and more small group which should have different interests. And for us, I think for the new business world, it's being more and more important to, have those small leaders of the small groups, bringing them, networking them together, and then making a consensus, and then building up leading them just in a new way, not just just leading a whole 2,000 people at the same time, but leading small groups at the spontaneous small groups at the same time. So. I think that kind of leadership is something not defined yet, and we are also, even inside my company, which also has like 2,000 people, we are struggling to find out the way how to do it. But I think that's the way we have to find out. If not, it'll be the no major breakthroughs going forward. So that kind of being small network groups, but all connected together, and then bringing not really full leadership, but just giving them the vision and the kind of making a platform they can communicate, they can network, they can build a consensus will be very important kind of leadership we need in next 20, 30 years.
Well, I think that the challenges that face young leaders in the 20 or 30 coming years are really varied and diverse and really very dramatic. Mm-hmm. We've been discussing in the last few days, different problems ranging from ecological challenges to global warming to poverty. But I think what is really important is to really see where each one of us, where we can make a difference. What cause can we really adopt? What passion we have for this cause, and what we can really do to try to change things. And in my case, actually, the cause that I have chosen and which I would like to share with you is actually my work with young people. And you will see how it is related with global challenges. Now, in Palestine, and as it is in most of the Arab countries, the majority of the population are young people. In the Palestinian case, we really know how to abuse our young people, abuse positively, meaning that we activate them when it comes to freedom fighting, to fighting against occupation. But when it is time to pay back, to give really political rewards or whatever, we keep them on the side. They are marginalized. And if you add to that the fact that the way young people live in crisis situations, where it's really the humiliation of living under occupation, all the time having to fight for your freedom, for your right just to exist as a human being, being deprived of so many opportunities, just even dreaming of having a decent job or continuing your education or having even the ability to visit your relatives and friends. This all in itself actually has a big toll on the psychological well-being of young people. So if you look at young people in the Palestinian context, you'll see lots of depression, you'll see lots of vulnerability, you'll see lots of the fact that they don't feel that they are not stakeholders in life. And many young people want to immigrate. Now, in such circumstances, young people become very vulnerable and they can easily be abused. They can abuse to be extremists, to be terrorists, if you want to call it, whatever. But for them, it's really a kind of fighting for justice, for their rights. So in such a context, my role and the role of my organization, which is the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation, is actually to give hope to young people and to show them how they can really voice their concerns and their issues and to show them a role that they can play in making a difference in society. Now, this is all related actually to all the big global challenge of fighting terrorism and extremism. And for us, coming from a crisis situation, we truly believe that if we don't work on trying to balance justice and equality, all those efforts might really be doomed with failure. So for me, it's really the big challenge is how to work on the human being, and how to really make the life that we are all striving to make better, to make this human being live with deserve to live in such circumstances. So for me, it's really picking the cause with passion and try your best to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I look at you guys and, you're at the Kennedy School. That means you're committed to do something in the public interest when you leave. And a lot of you are thinking, geez, I'm glad I'm in school right now because I don't have to be in D.C. A lot of stuff going on in D.C. I don't like. My prediction is you're going to look back on these days as the good old days, okay? These are the good old days. 20 years from now, you're going to say, hey, you remember back at the beginning of the century when we had seasons, right? And the farmers knew what to do? Remember when water wasn't rationed? You had fresh water, right? Remember Florida? Right? What am I talking about? I'm talking about catastrophic climate change, all right? We're mad, we think about Florida now, we're upset about a vote in 2000. There may not be a Florida at all. This is your generation's leadership challenge on steroids. It's to deal with this. And my view about it is that as scary as it is, you shouldn't want to trade places with any other generation. You know, we remember the World War II generation, the civil rights generation, not because what they did was easy, because it was hard. And big problems require big solutions and big leadership acts. And you're going to get a chance to be engaged in some of that stuff. My view about it is that we have a tremendous problem among social justice, civil rights, culture, which is it's a very complaint-based culture. It's a very issue-oriented, problem-defining, critique-generating culture. And the time for critiquing issues is over. This is the time for solutions, for solution-oriented leadership. Dr. King did not get famous giving a speech called, "I have a critique." You know? "I have a complaint. I got a long list of issues I'm pissed off about." I mean, that wasn't the thing. But when you listen to so-called progressive civil rights, whatever, it's this long litany of bad stuff. I think that the time has come for us to come forward with solutions. I think, in particular, solutions around climate change have to be big enough that they are going to force us to dream big enough that we can build much bigger coalitions. If we say we want to build a green economy that's strong enough to lift millions of people out of poverty and bring the country together, that's a big enough solution to put together a big coalition. If we want to say that in building this green economy, we want to honor the democratic traditions of equal protection, right? No more Katrinas. No more free market evacuation plans, right? Where in a crisis, if you got a credit card and a functioning car, you can live. Everybody else has to be left behind to sink or swim. No, equal protection. We say in building this new green economy, we want to honor the idea of equal opportunity and equal access. We don't want to have fought for 200 years to racially integrate a pollution-based economy and then have the green economy be this eco-elite, lily-white enclave. No, no. We want to have green-collar jobs for lots of people. We want to make sure those communities that were locked out of the pollution-based economy get locked into the new clean and green economy. This is an example of trying to be solution-oriented and big-picture hopeful-oriented. If you guys come off this campus focused on some of these bigger problems, but don't fall into the last 25 years pattern of critiquing everything, being all opposition and no proposition, I think you're going to be able to make a tremendous contribution.
Thank you. One last question, and then we want to open up to the floor. And my last question, after having heard about the big challenges, but also opportunities that are out there, the interdependencies that we heard Van just describe between poverty, the environment, but also, as we talked about before, between conflict and conflict resolution, and opportunities for peace and the environment and poverty. These interdependencies are clearly big challenges for all of us. So my question is, what skills, what advice would you give the future young global leaders for the kinds of skills that they should acquire now, the kinds of experiences that they should have now, which would prepare them and enable them to think about solutions and take advantages of the kinds of networks that you have described and building on the new technologies that we have heard about before? Renee?
I think that one of the most fundamental issues probably is to find the arena in which you want to have your first experiences career-wise. It may sound very prosaic given the scale of the challenges that you describe, but it really is your first step into the world beyond the Kennedy School or whichever Ivy League institution or other institution you may be privileged to be at. And it is really that will shape your initial experience and curve. And then related to that, it is about understanding this interplay between your personal desires for your life as a human being and your professional aspirations as a leader, and the interplay between those two factors, because I think we very often engage our leadership qualities and forget to nurture ourselves. And it may sound like a very soft issue, given the hard-edged issues and interdependencies that we're highlighting. But the one cannot go without the other. And it also relates to the extent to which you find your own authenticity of voice. That may be an authenticity of voice sitting on Capitol Hill. It may be an authenticity of voice sitting in a local community, giving leadership in a local community. It may be an authenticity of voice drafting a new scientific paper that breaks additional codes related to the human genome. So the project we attended last night and the absolute inspiration we all drew from it. So it really is about your choice of venue, your choice of your authenticity of voice, your capacity to nurture your own capacities, and nurturing them through your interactions with others, not only with your own ambition.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the days have changed, as Vanessa mentioned, and I don't think if, going into large organization or going to Capitol Hill or going to government could solve all the problems. So I think, now maybe it's time to be really specialist of being understanding a small problem and then finding a solution of that. And then, but that solution is not going to be solved as it is, because there is as intertwined with other many problems. So, but first of all, I think there is some area you have to define which you really have a passion and which makes you really interested. And then being a specialist, and then I think you need to really have to network. Networking doesn't mean just communicating, but persuading and being also understanding other issues to make bringing the small issues solution to the bigger solution. I think that's one thing. We always think if we be the president of a state, then we can solve all the problems, but it's not. It's just maybe in 1950s maybe, but these days it's not possible. But we have to more focus on the small problems. But it doesn't mean that we have to focus on that problem forever. But that would be a good start to be really a specialist, which you have passion in, and then you have to communicate to persuade the other specialists to kind of make a coalition or network to really work on the bigger problems.
Well, I would like to share with you 3 advices or attributes that will help really your leadership qualities. The first one is to believe in yourselves. How do we believe in ourselves? How do we really build our self-confidence? It doesn't just come parachuted on us. It's really an accumulative process. It's the education you get, the experience you gain from life, the ability to really stand up and continue every time you fail. This all if you accumulate this, it will really build your self-confidence. The second thing would be to focus on your mission. I think it's very important that you believe in something, focus on it, and work all the time to really try to achieve your goal. Now, this actually also requires that you study everything, that you learn about your competitors, all the issues that relate to your mission. The third advice would have to be to deal with creativity and persistence. So many times we have to really do things out of scratch. So you have to really use your imagination, your ability to be creative, and to be persistent. Don't just give up. Continue, and I believe that you will reach your goal, especially if you team up with people who believe in you, in your mission, and can be your real partner in working towards achieving this goal.
Well, I'll add 2 things to that, maybe 3. First, I want to channel my brother Arthur, who has been an incredible part of our YGL program, is one of the great freedom fighters in Africa. He's been talking about the need to get out of these silos, and I think that's the most important thing. As one of our professors said, the problems that we're facing now are interrelated, therefore the solutions will be interdisciplinary. The problems are interrelated, therefore the solutions will be interdisciplinary. And so some of you can be interdisciplinary, but if not, you need to know people who fill out those blind spots for us. I think that's really, really important. But I think the other 2 things, one is, I think it's a skill to be able to confess. We have in the United States, at least, a politics of accusation. People get very good at accusing people of all kinds of malfeasance. And it's as if, if George Bush would just disappear, the whole country would be fine. You know, and we get into that. And I get into that a lot, but but you know, talking to Professor Gergen, you know, and he's really trying to keep his critique honest and give the guy credit when credit is due. I think it's important to realize this whole politics of accusation is not going to solve the problem. There may be a politics of confession, though, where we actually admit to our own errors and put a spotlight on our own problems and ask for more help that may actually invite others into a better problem-solving space. So I think there may be something there. The other thing I feel is, again, I'm a little bit older than some of you guys, so I'm kind of coming out of the 90s. We got very good at calling people out. That was a big part of it. My friend here has gotten beat up pretty bad for you know, putting his foot in his mouth a little bit, and then, you know, it all becomes, hey, you know, you said that the wrong way. We've gotten very good at calling people out. I think that we're going into a situation where the problems are so severe that the real skill and opportunity is to learn how to call people up, right? Not calling them out, but calling people up. The work I'm doing now, trying to get young African American guys who used to be, some of them in prison, employed in the solar industry, right, which is almost completely white. If you go into it, you guys are a bunch of racists. You guys don't want to hire anybody. You guys better, we're going to sue you. If you go in with that, right, you might get a couple of guys jobs, but it's going to be a bad experience for them and everybody else. You're calling them out. We've been trying to call them up. You're beautiful, folks. What you're doing is beautiful. Let's expand it. Let's include more people. And we're finding that it works a little better. And I sleep better at night. So I think that there may be a different politics that's available that's more confessional, more inviting, more about calling up than calling out, more about propositions than oppositions. I think these are skills, though. And I don't know where we go to get them, but I think they'll be very valuable.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now I would like to open to the floor for comments and questions. Could you please identify yourself with your name and then ask your question? Ideally, a question would be specific to one of the panelists on a specific topic. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chusabli. I'm an MPA graduate here in Kennedy School. I'm an Asia Fellow now at the Center for Business and Government. I think one of the biggest challenges that we are or will be faced with may be the fact that we should deal with the intangible negative side effect, which will also be the result of the technological improvement, because technological improvement is so fast. And we did not know, we did not experience yet. So for addressing this challenge, or as you mentioned, for the exercising the solution-based leaderships, what would you guys prepare yourself? And more specifically, what should the role of government be in this unknown, uncertain world? Thank you.
I'll leave it up to you to
Anybody can.
to decide. Rennet, do you want to jump in?
Well, I'll jump in on one aspect of it. What could the role of governments be? I think it really relates to. It truly relates to what you were saying initially in your last intervention around politics, which is of the nature that he described to you, which will really create scope for feedback loops that work faster. So if policy innovation is not going to be stifled by government, but actually be aided by government, it will be about creating those feedback loops that work faster, which may even mean that we would need to create open architecture in our minds about how we structure politics in the representative forms in which we currently have it, and the nature and the limitations of those forms. I think we're seeing tendencies already where that kind of challenge is happening through feedback loops. As a South African, I'm particularly impressed with the kind of YouTube debate that one witnesses in the United States. It may sound like a soft soap answer to a very serious question, but it is a tangible example of how some of these things are already changing in terms of creating more rapid and more direct access and feedback loops to create scope for governments to facilitate the kind of politics and therefore in turn policy changes that will enable a different world.
Hi, my name is Juan Vivanco. I am from the University of Massachusetts. And my question deals with the issue of Darfur. We all know that international relations is about interest and power. However, humanitarian issues, moral issues have been winning field on the international arena. So my point is, as a global community, why we have failed to stop genocide after World War II, the Holocaust, after Rwanda, when we said never again. Now we have like 1 million people have died in Darfur. So how can we address this issue globally? Maybe the reform of the United Nations, I don't know. For instance, I personally believe that China is involved in an indirect way in this issue because of an economic relation with Darfur. So we have to ask, does China's survival and interest depends on these economic relations in order to allow these killings? So how are we going to deal with this issue globally as a community of nations? Because all the nations that belong to the international system we have some ethics, because we as democratic liberal democracies, we support and we defend human rights locally, and so internationally it makes sense to support that. So I think I feel ashamed that the United Nations, that the whole community has allowed these things to happen again. So what can we do to address this issue?
Thank you. Who would like to address the issue?
Well, I'll just actually comment. I think you very wisely analyzed the problem, and we all know that there are no easy answers. There are no easy solutions. What I believe is that it's very important for us, especially the young generation, to pick on those issues and not just to wait until solutions come to them. So it's really very important to us, groups of people, to gather and lobby for such causes, because sometimes, because of economic interest and so on, the world can't stay silent. So if you have a passion for something, it's important to really start and lobby and work and not just to sleep on those issues.
But I also think it's quite important to ensure that through public leadership, by virtue of the nature of the types of interdependencies that we keep hearing about, arguments are made much more convincingly than they have ever made in other generations for people to understand the need for a pooling of sovereignty. Whether that takes a form in a reformed United Nations or in structures and forms we are not yet able to predict, it's going to really boil down to public leaders in whichever sphere, and also popular NGO institutions and others, making arguments around pooling of sovereignty to tackle these issues and creating different networks to do so. But at the same time, because these are longer-term aspirations for a different world potentially, in the interim, one must also celebrate smaller incremental breakthroughs. I think the extent to which in the United Nations system there was a joint mandate resolution mandating a UN and AU joint force was a dramatic change for the United Nations, combining a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 8 mandate, which has never been done before. So even with the imperfections that we know exist in the United Nations system, there are small breakthroughs, and that actually carried Chinese support.
I'm sorry, I don't think we can, because we have a number of people who haven't asked a question yet. So we'll move to this side of the room. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Palak. I'm a first-year student in the Master's in Public Policy program. I want to welcome all of you to the Kennedy School. Thank you for being here, and in particular, I'd really like to welcome Van, and this question is for you. Could you talk a little bit more about your program and what the theory behind it is and how it connects to ideas of maybe more equitable economic growth, and just kind of how you're thinking about that topic, and how we can think about that, you know, within not only just the United States context, but the international context. So how do we like start to think about equitable growth around the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, to Arthur's point about getting out of the silos, you have to figure out a way going forward to do development in a way that you fight poverty and pollution at the same time. It's a fundamental insight. You can't, if you try to fight pollution in a way that disables you from dealing with the poverty problem, you'll have social chaos and it's immoral. And similarly, if you go after economic growth in a way that adds to global warming, it's also wrong. So you got a challenge here. What is the global economic development model that we could be on the same page about? Our argument is that focusing on green-collar jobs, focusing on the, again, as Arthur has said, the ecological solution side, the opportunity side of global warming, it has to be in the middle. of the agenda. So what does that mean in concrete terms? It means we're going to have to retrofit the United States, Western Europe. You're going to have to retrofit, rewire, and reboot nations, okay? Whole nations. You're going to have to weatherize millions of buildings. You're going to have to put up millions of solar panels, et cetera. All of that is work. All of that is jobs. We too often think that if we just get the president to sign some legislation, the problem is fixed. Well, the president could sign every global warming bill you want to tomorrow. The president's not going to put up a single solar panel. The president's not going to weatherize one building. You've got to train millions of people to do that work. Well, the opportunity here and around the world is to connect the people who most need work with the work that most needs to get done. That's the big opportunity, to connect the people who most need work with the work that most needs to be done. Our excitement about that is that for the first time, the elites who are looking over the horizon at global warming and the impoverished can have one agenda: a green economy that's strong enough to lift millions of people out of poverty. The way that's working in Oakland, just very briefly, is very simple. We're changing all the laws on the books to drive money into green development. In Berkeley, the city council said, listen, if you want to put up solar panels, put them up. You don't have any money, put them up. And we'll fold the cost of the solar panels on your house into your local property taxes over a 15-year period. Instantly created a market for solar, instantly created a need for, a demand for labor, and gave us the opportunity to rush in with job training. These are the kinds of opportunities that are going to be available all around the world. And it's business, labor, and government working together to solve a real problem.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Duncan Stewart, I'm from the private sector in Silicon Valley, high tech. Big solutions require passion and resources. Young people have traditionally provided the passion through idealism. We carry less baggage, but haven't provided the resources. And I see a new opportunity here in this generation, signified by your panel. You have both passion here and resources. We have young people with so much money, they don't know what to do with it. And those are those are the young people we need to help step up to the plate, to provide money as a catalyst to fuel the passion that some of the rest of us are providing. Are we making the best use of that opportunity? I'm not sure it's going to come again. I think we need to use it as well as possible.
A great suggestion. Yeah, we'll definitely take that on, but it's also a question.
Yeah, I mean,
I actually, that happens.
But really, I mean, I think you made a very good point. I think that's, people, not because of they're young, but because of they have been, earning a lot of money because of the breakthrough they have made, many from the technology breakthrough. I think they tend to be more responsible for the society and things like that. And also, for the investment side, before there was just the capital, labor, and then the return on investment and things like that was the kind of measurement of how successful your business is. But these days, not only about corporate responsibility, but social return is being one of the very measurement of the success of the company. And I think just as I said, matching those kind of things, but also the companies are going to make an evolution to think just not about the return in terms of the cash money return, but also the social return they can make. And the people choosing the job will tend to have more preference to go to the company which has bigger social return than just paying more bonuses. And also, company wants to go into that direction because we all know that it's not sustainable. We can earn a lot of money maybe for a few 10 years, but the climate change and everything could have a very serious effect on our businesses. So the business leaders, many of young business leaders and many new business leaders, I think, have that kind of your thinking. And I'm very more optimistic that that kind of thing is happening and will happen in the future.
Well, I'll just like to add one thing, actually, which is that I think more investment is needed in really lining out the supplementary role that could be played between the private sector, civic sector, and governmental sector. It's not only just in the United States. Unfortunately, you see it even more, maybe if you go to Africa and the Middle East and different countries around the world. And it's really how to outline and bring people on board, so that really that if you have a mission with passion and you feel you are really making a difference and you can improve the lives of whole generations, how you can really, with small investments, really make this change. So I hope more investment in structuring this could be put.
Thank you. So we have time for 2 more questions, and so we'll take the 2 questions right here on the floor.
My name is Mike Gordon. I teach corporate entrepreneurship and international programs, and I am personally very excited to be in this room right now, surrounded with optimistic people who want to make a difference and who are in a position to make a difference. I think most of us, everyone here is feeling the same way. You know, I grew up during the Cold War when there were 10,000 missiles aimed at us, and we were aiming 10,000 missiles, and it was pretty tragic times in those days. And the problems now, I think, are more magnified because they are so broad in scope. And when, Hania, you talked about bringing vision forward, that the key to success is the vision. What came to my mind is the importance of matching the size of the vision to the size of the problem. For example, in the case of clean energy and climate change, my understanding is that most of the problem is based on coal burning in China and India and some of the other countries. And you know, to not come up with a vision that can deal with that, or the 40,000 nuclear weapons that exist in the world still, and the things that are threatening us. So the challenge is, how do we really bring these magnificent visions forward that'll deal with the magnitudes of the problems that we face? And I applaud you all for what you're doing.
Thank you. Van, do you want to comment on the...
Sure, just to correct the record,
Right.
that the problem is us. It's not India and China. We are still the #1 per capita. The United States is the #1 per capita emitter of carbon. And if you look at all the carbon that's up there, it's a whole lot more of it's ours than China and India, even if they keep going the way they're going. So I think the United States has chosen, unfortunately, to be a world leader in war, in incarceration rates, in pollution. Our challenge inside of this country isn't to point fingers at other countries. I really think it's to say, how do we become the world leader, not in the pollution, but in the solution? How do we actually model and demonstrate that these are viable technologies? How do we share them with India and China so they can boot up the smart way and don't do it the dumb way that we did it? That's really, I think, the mission of this generation. And for us not to get pulled into any kind of anti-China, anti-India conversation along economic or environmental lines, because frankly we need each other. These 3 countries need each other. The world needs us to cooperate and solve this thing together.
Last question.
Hi, my name is Angela from Korea. I'm Kennedy School alum and then Asia Fellow here. I admire for all of you that to bring vision into reality. And then I would like to ask a question that when you were faced with doubts or cynicism or difficulties that people will say, oh, can you do it? It's too idealistic. What was your personal anchor to sustain and then not to stop it?
Okay, I think that is a great last question that we could maybe answer just in turn. And so why don't we start with Renette, and then we'll go through our panel for one last round.
In my case, I'm going to concretize it in a specific example because it tends to add to the narrative. In South Africa, we had a very controversial strategic defense procurement package. And one of the committees that I was involved in Parliament at the time launched an investigation, which was then largely frowned upon by the executive, and Parliament was cracked down on. And it was a very challenging situation because you inherently knew that the odds were stacked against the institution. Even if you were a member of Parliament from the ruling party, you realized quite well that the odds were stacked against both Parliament and the investigation. I think it's a combination of understanding that although you may not have the nirvana that you may want in a situation like that, which would have been a fully fledged investigation, to keep going and understand that whatever you may be involved in trying to assist the institution will still ultimately assist democracy, even if you do not get your ultimate objective, which would have been a full investigation. The process itself enriched democracy, not the extent to which I may have wanted it idealistically in my own eyes, but it certainly still enriched the process. So I think it's about having the tenacity and stubbornness, but also having the humility to also adjust your goals, not to sacrifice them, but to adjust them.
Yeah, I think I have a bit, different, but my experience was, I founded my company in '95 on internet, service company. That was one of the first company in Asia. Not only in Asia, we were founded even before Yahoo was incorporated and things like that. But still, so we were saying internet, and nobody was believing in it will be successful. But my way of thinking was, this was something I like. I like to work on the building some new technology to make the society to have some impact, and I thought that can change the world. Maybe not in 10 years. I always say my business plan was very wrong, because I was thinking that maybe in 30 years I can be successful or things like that. But it happened in 7 years. But still, but that I think that once you like it, I was even thinking that if I don't earn a successful, I don't earn enough money, maybe I can think of myself as not very well paid kind of NGO. So really, I was really, in the beginning, I was thinking about whether we should make it, a foundation, or the name of the company as the, Daum Foundation or Daum, Corp. So at the end of the day, we decided to make a corp to incorporate as the company for profit. But that was kind of a dilemma. But I think when you have a passion of something, and then I think when you choose something you should do, then when there is some kind of the doubts and everything, then you have a problem to pursue further, because it makes you more cynical and things like that. But if there's something you like and you don't care that much about other compensations and other people doing better and things like that, I think you can be stubborn and you can be looking into focus and things like that. And I think ultimately that will lead to your success if you just do what you really want to do, and you put all your effort on that kind of thing. So that was my example, although I know that there are many things you should do, but I was on just entertaining myself. But
thank you. Kanya.
Well, I don't think it's easy. It's a very hard path, and it can be very painful sometimes. And sometimes I remember I would just go home, and I need just someone to hug me or a shoulder, and I would cry. But the next morning, I would wake up, dress up, put my makeup, and appear very strong, and go and continue. Sometimes I would just, contemplate and say, what did I put myself into? It's just too much. It's a big challenge. And I think the hardships grow, and your internal struggles grow as your mission grow, and what you are achieving. You feel that it's really multiplying. So, and sometimes there are lots of frustrations. Like just last night, since traveling from a long distance, every morning I'm awake from 1 a.m. So I was on the internet, and my organization delegated 2 young people to travel to Dubai for a conference for young Arab youth on media. And always we prided ourselves as PLARA, as my organization, for starting the whole culture of youth media in Palestine, which is not even existing in the Arab world. So I was reading this press release that came out of this conference, and I was burned. My head was on fire. So they were still, advocating that we should start and invest in youth media in the region. And immediately I started emailing people, what's this? Already it's there. Instead of recognizing this and uploading it, you just put it on the side. So you find lots of obstacles, lots of challenges, but it's each time that you don't give up. You have to continue. And I think the best incentive that keeps you going is when you get those small success stories along the way. Each time you feel that you want to give up or stop or pursue even your personal goals as an individual, when someone comes and thank you and you hear someone that you have made a difference in their lives or saved their lives or, added something, you feel that, yes, I'm doing the correct thing and I have to continue. And the last thing, especially for people who work from the civic society, I think the major success for you as an individual when you really deprive yourself of this selfishness of the I and work towards the we, the community. This is where you really make a difference, not just on the personal level, but on the group level.
Well, I agree with my sister here that it is hard.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Yes. It is hard. And, I think, for me, first of all, the success for me is very new. I first started talking about green jobs, not jails, in 2001. And my board, every board meeting for 4 years, you look at the notes, tried to stop me. They didn't think it was a good idea at all. They thought it was mission creep. They thought it was a distraction from our anti-prison work. I lost a lot of friends who said, hey, you used to be this radical black guy and now you're like beating drums in the woods with white people, man. What happened, It's like, so, you have to go through a lot sometimes. But at the end of the day, everybody in this room has some really crazy idea that would make a tremendous difference. And the mere fact that you keep writing about it in your journal whenever you're on the airplane, you look back at 2 years ago, you had the same idea. You got friends you're tired of hearing about it, wish you do something about it. They won't tell you that. If it's a recurring thing, that's part of your purpose here. And I encourage you to stick with it. I literally got to the point I was like, honestly, if my board is going to be beating me up every other month, I'm going to create my own board in my mind. I'm serious, man. And I had my board. I have my wife. I have board meetings in the restroom. And when it gets hard, man, my board has Mandela on it. You know what I mean? Dr. King, Bob Marley band. I got a board, man. It's awesome. And I ask them questions and I talk to them and they say, hey, young man, okay, yes, sir. Sometimes you just have to just find a way, And so now, all of a sudden, it's Time Magazine and it's all this stuff and 60 Minutes and people, this is a brilliant idea. And I know the price that I paid to wait for my moment to come. You'll have to pay a price. The only thing I can tell you is it's worth it. And you're right. You may not say it the right way. You may need some help. But whatever that thing is that made you come in this building and put up with all this crap here at Harvard, whatever it is, believe in it, stick with it. If you got to go beat drums in the wood with white people, do what you got to do, and it'll be all right.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so if you, I hope, have been impressed by the 4 people on the podium as much as I have been, let me tell you that you have to multiply this by 10 because we actually have 40 such people in this room who have similar stories, similarly incredible experiences, and similarly helpful advice to offer. And they agreed to stick around and meet with you, talk to you, share their stories. And that's why the forum today is a little differently organized than normally, not just the chairs here, but in fact the tables, so that you can grab something to drink, something to eat in the back, and then come back here and meet and talk and spend some time together. Thank you all very much.